Today is one of my favorite days as a shepherd. Probably my second favorite day. The first day being the day when you get lambs, because lambs are cute. And today is the day where you see the fruit of that effort, and that is meat coming back from the butcher. We always have our lambs done at a butcher. We haven't processed our own yet. That is on the horizon for us. One day we'll get there. We're not quite there yet. And today we got back our biggest haul that we've ever gotten from lamb before. And I'm really excited to show you how much meat you can get back. Okay, so here we have two sheep, two lambs. And when I say lambs, these are 10-month-old rams, intact, completely grass-fed, no grain. They are full-blood Dorper. It would have been nice if one lamb was completely in one box and one was in the other. That is how they gave it to me. My little freezer over there couldn't take it, and I spilled everything. But once I sort it out, we'll be able to see pretty quickly because I got very different cuts for both. But I want to talk about what I am most excited about, and that is this number right here. So that 50.6 pound, that's very average for a lamb. That's great. Between 45 and 55 pounds, at least for me, for your average hair sheep, something like a Dorper or a Katahdin, pretty typical. But this, I've never had anything that big. Almost 66 pounds, and that's hanging weight. That's how much meat came home in a box with me. So yes, that does include bones and organs, but those are useful, and I'll talk more about that in that video. But I wanted to say how happy I am. I've never had a haul that big. The biggest I've had before that 65 was like 50 pounds. I think I may have had one at 55 pounds. If anyone is wondering what a 65-pound hanging weight sheep looks like, I'll see if I can dig up a video and put it in here to show you what that guy looks like, or if I can't find that, I'll show you his brother. But something I want to call out is that, these two numbers right here, that 50 and that 65, those sheep were born days apart from each other. They had the same diet. I didn't treat one any different. When one moved, the other moved. When I gave one hay, the other one got the same hay. It's just so impressive to see the difference on that with sheep. I mean, this 65, almost 66 pounder was a really handsome, good-looking sheep. I mean, he could have been a stud. I just didn't have any buyers lined up for him, and I wanted another sheep in the freezer. Okay, so I'm going to start sorting this stuff out. Okay, so a real quick tip that I have for anyone who's processing lamb. Get what you like. You might be intimidated when you go there to the butcher and they start asking what cuts you want, and you're just like, just give me a regular old lamb. And they're like, no, like, tell us what you want. That can be difficult. So it's taken me definitely a lot of learning to figure this out. So what I have found that we really like are basically three categories of things. One is going to be ground. After ground, we really like stew meat. So that's just going to be boneless chunks of lamb. And then after that, we really like big cuts. So those are going to be like leg and shoulder cuts of lamb. Then there are specialty cuts like that are after that are nice to have. My recommendation is that if you're processing only a few sheep at a time, so in this case it was 2 for us, the bigger one, so in our case the 65 pounder, turn that one into your cuts. And then if you really go through ground meat as much as we do, that's a better use for your smaller animal, to do them into ground meat. So what we actually did is we turned the smaller one almost entirely into ground meat and stew meat. I think I maybe got a couple of cuts from him, but I think that's why I got so many bones out of this, is because one whole sheep we basically just entirely turned into ground and stew meat. And I know some people watching this are going to be like, why would you do that? That's such a stupid thing to do. You want the cuts, you want the big things. And that's great. If that's what you want, that's good. But for me and my family, we go through a lot of ground lamb. That's the most useful meat to me. I'm not selling it at a farmer's market. I know I'd get more for cuts. And I have plenty of cuts here, but we go through ground meat much quicker. So for our family, we do that. At the end of the day, this is really what it comes down to. you're feeding people, you're feeding families. In my case, my own family. And I know it seems like, oh, like look at all this meat, isn't this cool? But it really is something that causes reflection and gratitude for the quality of life given for the animal. So we're grateful for it. We're grateful for our land, for our sheep, and absolutely for the meat that feeds us and sustains us. Okay, so I've divided the lamb now into what I believe is a pretty darn good guess between the two. So let's start with our 50-pounder. Most of it was ground with some stew meat there. That is about 20 pounds of ground, about 12 pounds of stew, and then I should have counted out the bones, maybe 12 or 15 pounds of bones. So if you do the math, that doesn't add up to 50 pounds. That's the hang weight. Hang weight is kind of what they go by. There's always a little bit of stuff that they lose out on there. So if you ever process and you're like, well, what the heck? That 50 is less than adding up all this stuff. That's typical. And then this one, you notice I get a lot less bones and a lot less ground. And that's because, again, for the smaller, again, my recommendation is I like to go heavy on the ground, and then basically anything that's worthy of a cut, turn it into stew meat, which is why I get a lot of ground and a lot of bones in that. A lot less ground meat from this guy, but a lot more cuts. You can see less bones, but more cuts, which is fun. Again, if you're processing too, I really recommend going this route because you're left with a ton of ground meat, a ton of stew meat. If you're feeding your family, get what you want. Between these two sheep, I've got 33 pounds of ground lamb. There's about 11 in each of these columns of ground lamb. And then this column that's next to the ground lamb is stew meat. And so there are 7 bags of that stew meat. Each bag is 1.5 pounds. And that's the nice thing about doing that with these folks is they ask how much you want in a bag. And for us, 1.5 pounds is really kind of more appropriate for our family's dinner size. So we don't have to crack open 2 pounds of meat and be left with awkward leftovers. We can just have one pack that works for us. And then I have some specialty cuts here. Again, all of these on this row come from the bigger of the sheep, but the ones that I'm really excited for are shoulder. This is amazing, slow cooked leg of lamb with the bone in. The bone is where a lot of flavor comes from, so try to go bone in if you can with your larger cuts. And then we have, speaking of bones, we've got 21 bags of bones here, and I think each bag is about 1 pound. So that's 21 pounds of bones. We never have enough bone broth in this house. We almost always have bone broth simmering. So we're happy about that. We're happy about lamb bones. And then I have loin chops. I really like being excited. I probably should have got these. This is 3/4 of an inch. I probably should have gone the full inch on getting these. They're about 1/2 pound per bag here. I think there's 3 chops in there. Unless you've got a real big sheep, your chops are going to look puny like this. And I honestly, like, if I can make a perfect one of these, that's my favorite thing to eat. But I probably should have gotten them a little bit thicker. Here's some other cuts that I'm really excited about. Another leg of lamb with the bone in. What does that come out to? About 3 pounds there. Lamb leg. So this is where, like, this would be like a lamb steak. Like, I think this stick, or here's the bone. So that would be like your typical like leg steak from a sheep. I just chose to get it. Basically, it's like a leg roast. And then I've gone back and forth on this, and I think I finally have what I like. For the rack, I like to get it just as the full rack of lamb. I don't like it. I mean, chops are great. Like when you can get these guys. Why am I only thinking of what I've heard them called colloquially? I've heard them called like lamb lollipops. But these things are super good. But I like to get them whole like this, so you don't have to, like, if you want to cut them up, you just thaw them and cut them up. But I like to cook them. Like that. Oh, you know what? I'll ask the audience here. I got something I don't know what it is. I don't know if I've ever gotten this. Lamb loin. I assume that's probably the same cut as like a pork loin, which is supposed to be a really tender cut of meat. I don't know if I've ever gotten this before. So I'm really excited to try that. Let me know if you've tried it. Hit me up in the comments. I'd like to learn how you cook it. And then here's another piece of the leg, bone in, of course. Thanks for hanging out with me today on my screened-in patio, talking about sheep meat. I'm PJ with the High Mountain Homestead, and I'll see you again real soon.